G'day, welcome back to the channel and welcome to today's video. My name's Matt, but you will know me as WFX Malice. Today we're playing Car Mechanic Simulator 2018 and we're going to be restoring this Holden Commodore VKSS HDT. Now this isn't standard issue in the game and it's not available in any of the DLCs. This is available on the Steam Workshop and it's made by a user called Golly. I've chucked a link in the description down below. They've made a lot of cool JDM and Aussie vehicles, there's some movie fandom vehicles, and there's also quite a few tracks they've made. Definitely go and check out their content and show them some love. There's a lot of hard work gone in there. Now I do apologise if this video is a little bit choppy. There was 3.5 hours worth of raw video that I had to cut down to less than 20 minutes. There was a lot of distractions in real life, phone calls. There was also a lot of spamming going on Discord that just kept distracting me while I was doing this build. And also I was sort of distracted by the aesthetics of the vehicle. I kept running around and admiring the vehicle and checking out on all different angles, and well, I'll be honest, when I've sped the video up it just made me nauseous, so I had to cut a lot of that out. For those of you who haven't played Car Mechanic Simulator, it's a pretty basic sort of game. It's not like real mechanics, so I've seen a lot of people say I want to play this game because I want to learn to be a mechanic. You're not going to learn to be a good mechanic playing this game, trust me on that. They cut a lot of corners and there's a lot of things that don't make sense. Like the fact that these cars are manual, that have an automatic transmission with a clutch, and yeah. Anyway, I think you get the picture. So you start out in this game taking on small mechanical repair jobs from customers. Mainly they're old clapped out drift pigs and rust buckets. Once you progress, you slowly get nicer vehicles and you get better jobs. You start doing bigger jobs and make more money. So it is a little bit grindy to begin with, but stick with it, you will make some money. Once upon a time you could go to the auctions and you could go to barns and you could find old vehicles and buy them cheap and restore them and make some money. They've patched the game a lot and they've taken that out, so you can still go and do all those things, but the money in it is minimal, and sometimes you'll end up losing money if you buy the wrong vehicle and you don't have the right sort of spare parts already from doing other repairs on people's vehicles. You really want to have your repair skill upgraded and you want to have your parts removal skill upgraded so that you can maximize your profit and speed up the whole process of taking vehicles apart. So as you can see, it's pretty in-depth. You can strip vehicles down right back to nothing here. There is a few issues with this vehicle. I don't know if you've noticed, but if you're a Holden person, you would have spotted that this had twin wishbone suspension. Now that's not the case, and you'll see when we look inside the bonnet, this is a strut tower type vehicle. Definitely not the right sort of setup, but I guess the author of this vehicle was bound by what you can put into the game, so they had to base this vehicle off of another vehicle in the game, and of course some things just don't line up. There's that automatic transmission I was talking about. Take that automatic transmission off and look at that, there's a clutch behind it. Oops. Another thing the game itself has lacked in detail, and once again that's not the author of this vehicle's fault, it's literally limitations within the game. So when you buy a vehicle from the auction or the barn, you can see it's pretty rusty, everything's pretty much had it, and if you want to restore the vehicle and make some decent money when you sell it, you've got to put everything on brand new 100% condition. So as I said, you can upgrade your repair skills and you can take things over to your repair bench and you can try to repair as much as you can. It does cost you to repair and there is a chance that you will destroy that part in trying to repair it, so it's not always 100% successful. But there's definitely some money to be made if you can. Another slight glitch with the Commodore, as you can see here, that is definitely not the trailing arm or the spring or suspension setup you'd find on a Commodore. There's definitely not U-bolts. There's these stupid round bushes that are impossible to get out. The last lot I took out of an old Commodore, I think I ended up using the grinder and cutting the sleeves of the bushing and end up chiseling it out, so not fun. You can't get a press in under the diff, you pretty much got to take the diff out if you wanted to put them in a press, and yeah, good luck finding a 10-ton press that would be able to get a diff inside of it. But as we talked about before, that's limitations within this game. So once you get the vehicle stripped down completely, as you see here, you can start to go ahead and do your repairing, and then you can look at what sort of engine you want to put in the vehicle. So we're going to take the engine out of this one, and we're going to go from the old carburetor 5 litre to the injected 5 litre. We refer to them here in Australia as the bunch of bananas, and you can see that by the manifold. Typical bunch of bananas. It's pre LS1 engines. It's a steel block 5 litre, very common, found in a lot of the Aussie V8s of the 90 era. Now, I learnt from a previous build I did on a Tirana not to use performance parts on everything. Using performance upgrades on all parts of a car will make the vehicle undrivable. It's good fun to spin around, but if you actually want to drive the vehicle in the game, you want to sort of limit yourself here and try to keep things within reason. Another small issue I found within the game here is that you can't buy performance cranks. You can buy performance pistons, but you can't buy cranks. That makes no sense at all to me.
You better hold on real tight, 'cause my knuckles turning real white. I'm a real fighter in here. You don't matter to me, you don't matter to me. You're running out of good times, 'cause I'm coming off the sideline. I'm a real fighter in here. You don't matter to me, you don't matter to me. I'm rising up now. Taking my shot now, make you my background. I'm rising up now, I won't back down. Taking my shot now, make you my background. I'm not a fan of your presence. I guess you never learned your lesson. This is my time, and you can't take it from me. You can't take it from me. I don't think you wanna test this. Less a warning, more a blessing. This is my time, and you can't take it from me. You can't take it from me. I'm rising up now. No, I won't back down. Taking my shot now, make you my background. I'm rising up now, I won't back down. Taking my shot now, make you my background. Now I won't stop now. I'm finally coming off the ground. I got no limits now. Don't catch me sitting in the clouds. And I won't stop now. I'm finally coming off the ground. I got no limits now. Don't catch me sitting in the clouds. I'm rising up now. No, I won't back down. Taking my shot now, make you my background. I'm rising up now. I won't back down. Taking my shot now, make you my background.
Now, this is the part of the video that does get a bit choppy, and I do apologise. Usually I set the tyres to fit and balance while I'm working on the vehicle, and I run backwards and forwards and do bits and pieces. However, from a viewer's point of view, the backwards and forwards on a sped up rate was just making me nauseous, and it just didn't make sense in a timeline. So I've chopped and changed. I've done all of the tyre changes here in post edits and kept all the build all together. So you'll notice there's a few scenes backwards and forwards that looks like I've moved position when I haven't, but that's just my edit. Now, these old Holden Commodores, I've owned a lot of them over the years. For those who don't know what that is, it's the GM family sedan. It started in 1978. Technically, the car died off at about 2017. They're still making them. They're still using the Commodore badge name. However, it's not a Holden Commodore anymore. They're no longer built in Australia, and they're no longer a rear-wheel drive 6-cylinder and 8-cylinder. They're now a front-wheel drive 4-cylinder and an all-wheel drive 6-cylinder turbo. They're basically a rebadged, glorified Daewoo, so I wouldn't touch one with a 10-foot pole anymore. They used to be a relatively reliable vehicle. When I say relatively reliable, they were known for breaking down, but they were cheap to fix and they were easy to fix on the side of the road, so you almost didn't mind when it had a problem. You could basically fix it with some spare parts you had laying around in the shed with a bucket full of tools. Whereas nowadays they're obviously a lot more complex, and I'll be honest, I wouldn't trust a Daewoo, and I wouldn't want to have to try and fix one on the side of the road with all the electronics on them. So I've owned pretty much every Commodore, with the exception of a VP, a VR and a VC. I've had VBs, I've had VHs, I've had VKs, I've had VLs, VNs, VSs, and I stopped buying Commodores after the VS because I just really didn't like them. There's just little parts of the vehicle where I felt they didn't finish the car off completely. And it's just something as simple as like the dogleg panel, which is the little part that fits onto the rear wheel arch behind the rear door. From VT onwards, they didn't put a dogleg panel. No, they put a piece of rubber in there where they forgot to put that panel. Just little things like that turned me off the vehicles. They started to look very round and overweight and didn't really suit my style. But there was a time in my life where I was restoring these things. I'd buy them cheap on Gumtree, eBay and Trading Post when that thing was alive. And I buy cars old school way. If someone's selling a vehicle, you give them a call straight away, you get their address, you turn up with some cash in your hand and you snap it up and you drive it away. Not like kids today, they want to send 1,000 text messages backwards and forwards, and they want to ask over the phone what's the cheapest price you'll go. I don't deal with those sort of people, and when I'm trying to sell a vehicle, it's come and look at the vehicle, have a look at it, identify whether you want to spend your money on it, then you make an offer, not what's the cheapest price you'll do. At the end of the day, the cheapest price I'm willing to do is the most amount of money you're willing to pay. But I made a small profit off of this, enough so that I could go ahead and buy my first house. It was a lot easier to do back then. I was living in South Australia, and South Australia doesn't require roadworthy inspections before you buy or sell a vehicle, so it's one cost you can take out of it. It makes it a lot easier when you're buying and selling. There's all the eastern states seem to have all these rules where you have to take a vehicle into a mechanic. They have to say the vehicle's roadworthy. Mechanic's putting his name to it, so if someone buys a dodgy vehicle and they crash it and they die, well, that mechanic said that vehicle was roadworthy, and then if the insurance companies can deem it's not roadworthy, then they can sue the mechanic loses his license. So, as you can tell, there's a lot of arse covering, as we'll say there, and all of a sudden they start being very picky on what they will and won't pass. So doing these sort of restorations for me just wasn't profitable anymore. Not that I'm saying I was dodgy with my vehicles, but you could get away with a little bit, and you know, if someone's buying a cheap vehicle, it's as is, where is. You take a little bit of a risk sometimes, and that's the risk I used to take. I'd turn up to someone's front yard and I'd pick up a old Commodore for as little as $50. Yeah, that's right, $50. If the vehicle wasn't in a good shape and you weren't going to be able to drive it, you'd still be able to salvage it for spare parts. And that was the beauty of these old Commodores, is parts were basically the same throughout of them. They did obviously change things and they did evolve over the years, but Something as simple as like the engine crossmember, you could take one from a VS Commodore and fit it to an old VH. So I did do an engine conversion on a VK, taking an injected 6-cylinder out of a VS, and I'll just put the whole suspension, K-frame, which is your engine subframe, straight into the old VK, and pretty much everything bolted up, with the exception of a couple of small suspension arms which you just sort of had to mix and match between different models over the years. But that's how they made these things, is that they kept the parts the same and made it nice and easy to work on. And that was the beauty of them, and well, like I said, that really died off over the last couple of models, and particularly now that it's just a glorified Daewoo. Wouldn't touch one. Holden is dead as far as I'm concerned. They no longer build any vehicles in Australia. Everything's built overseas, and most of it comes straight out of Korea. The VK was actually the first Holden that started to use a lot of plastic parts, so plastic bumpers and plastic panels around the place. As we moved into the newer era, which is the VE, VF, there was a lot more plastic panels, plastic boots and plastic boot wells, I should say. They're getting to the point where it's just throwaway vehicles, and that's where we're going to end up. The Chinese way of doing things, of building a vehicle, owning it for a few years and throwing it in the bin. So here we got a nice dyno run. We went from 106 horsepower, which was, 70 something kilowatt, dismal, with the injected 5 litre, with all the parts on there, 677 horsepower at 5,920 RPM, that's 505 kilowatts. Much more impressive. I will take this into the garage. I was going to take this to the test track, but for some reason, when I did the screen record of this, none of the audio worked from in-game. So if I took it for the test drive on here, I would have been making car noises with my mouth. And while that might be entertaining, it's not quite the same. So that there is a Holden Tirana, the old SS hatchback, or SLR 5000, next to the VK SS HDT Rocky. What a tough bunch, and of course the Ford GT over there in the corner. Well guys, that is about it. I appreciate you hanging about this far in the video. Please throw me a like, throw me a comment, subscribe. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.